How's everybody doing? Today we have a very special project, something I personally haven't seen floating anywhere around the internet. It involves something yellow and it involves something blue, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. I really do. But first, let's take a quick look. As you can see behind me, this place is a disaster. Brand new garage, I'm 20 feet wide, 30 feet deep, 9.5 foot ceilings. This is a dream space, but it's a disaster. So today is gonna be step one of changing that. Let's get going. Okay, enough of the B-roll, enough of the slow-mo. Let's introduce the stars of today's show. And before I do this, I just want to acknowledge I'm very privileged and blessed to be able to have these two pieces of equipment and start this shop build out. But without further ado, here's number one. Boom. Brand new, got a DeWalt 779, I believe. This is just a hardcore miter saw. We use them on job sites all the time. I'm a general contractor and these things just work. But wait, number two. This one I'm really excited about. Right there, the Evolution mitering chop saw. So what we're looking to do today is take this saw, and build the ultimate miter saw stand for both steel and wood. And it's gonna go right there. Let's get started. So here's the story I think most of us can relate to. Too much stuff in just a horrible organization system. This shelving unit I thought was gonna be great, but in reality it's too deep. The holes on the shelves and the wire grates are too big, stuff falls through, rattle cans roll everywhere. It's on wheels, but I can't move it because there's just too much junk. So everything along this wall is gonna get totally scrapped and rethought, and this is gonna be our miter station wall. Like I said, I've got 20 feet. It's not quite as much as I'd like, but it's gonna work just fine. We're probably gonna have about 10 feet of in-feed and then 6 feet of out-feed for both the saws. So if I need to break something down that has a longer drop than 6 feet, that's fine. I'll just cut it with a quarter band or I'll cut it with a circular saw. But for most working lengths of pieces, this is gonna be great for what I need. So, two saws, we're gonna go along this back wall, and then we're slowly gonna build out storage around everything. Are you getting dizzy from all the different views? As you can probably tell, this is my first YouTube video in a really, really long time. All the cool kids are doing it, so may as well jump in. So, what I'm looking to do with these two saws is build one ultimate miter saw station. What I want is a fence on both sides that I can have some sort of stop block that clamps down to so we can make repeatable cuts over and over and over. I've had just a non-mitering, just the square cut version of this saw before. Actually was borrowing it from a friend for a really long time, about 3 years. And that was nice, but it was always on the ground, there was no outfeed support, and you could never make exact repeatable cuts. And if I'm gonna set this up, I'm gonna do it right once. So there's a few things we need to consider. One, this DeWalt saw, biggest problem with it is the distance from the fence to the wall is gigantic. Wait. It is, let me tell you, to the back of the cord, 21.5 inches. So that means our countertop has to be at least that deep. Now, for me, that's not gonna matter because you'll see I've got some storage planned on, using this depth of the countertop behind this saw. The biggest complaint most people have with it is this distance here. You just can't get it very close to the wall. And it's unfortunate, but other than that, the saw is cheap and it's just a beast. So we're gonna work around that and design to make it work. Now, the other thing we've got here is these two saw tables are not coplanar. This saw table sits much higher off of a flat surface than this saw table. So that's something we're gonna have to design around. This saw table sits 4 7/16 off the surface, and I'm about 3 5/8 on this surface. So I'm gonna have to design something that will allow the saws to be coplanar. Now, as you can probably see, I have my computer in front of me. I'm very fortunate to have a pretty deep understanding of CAD. I went to school at the University of Utah for mechanical engineering and learned SolidWorks in this particular case there. And I've used it so many times since then. It's a very, very, very expensive program, something like a few $1,000s. But I was able to buy a license one time and I use it for everything I want to build. I find it much easier to model and design something on the computer first. It allows me to see all the hiccups and maybe potential roadblocks down the road. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm basically going to draw this building, this garage in SolidWorks, in CAD, and then design our miter saw station to fit. I'll draw the windows in, I'll draw outlets and power supplies, absolutely everything to make sure when we build this miter station for these bad beauties here in steel, we know it's going to work. So unfortunately, as much as I want to start cutting steel and getting the welding helmet out, we're going to start with a few hours on the computer. So let's dive in and I'll see you once I'm done.
Oh boy, alright, I've got a habit of getting long-winded, so I'll try and keep this short. But essentially what I've done is I've drawn the garage. I modeled the width, the height, and the windows, and these are all accurate to how it's built in space. The other thing I've done is I was able to grab this miter saw, this woodworking DeWalt saw, off of GrabCAD online, and then I've just modeled roughly the metal chopping or the metal miter saw, just so I kind of have an idea of how things are going to lay out in space. What we're going to start by doing is building these two benches, and then we'll attach them with a stretcher. So the first thing we need to do is build these leg assemblies. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 leg assemblies, and then we'll weld the stretchers to them. Then we'll make the tops and start bolting it all together. So there's a whole lot we could get into here, but I think this probably gives everyone the rough idea of what we're looking to do, and we'll go from there.
And here we are. So as you can see from the computer models, we're going to start with 2 simple tables and a beam between them to put the saws on. Now, I know some of you are concerned about wood and sawdust and sparks and wood, and while I may come to eat these words in the future, for right now, I'm not too worried about it. This is not a fine woodworking shop, and this is not a high-end metal fab shop. This is just a hobby shop for me, and I want to be able to come in here and get to work on projects. So, in order to build those benches, unfortunately, we're starting on the ground. Now, you also may see the tubing in the plans and also sitting right here next to me and think, holy cat's paws, that is some heavy duty stuff. And you know what? It is. And that's for 2 reasons. 1, I'd rather overdo than underdo just about everything. And 2, I like the way it looks. So if you want to use smaller gauge tubing or smaller diameter, that's totally fine. But for me, this is my dream shop. I'm going to do it once. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it my way. So let's get after it. Boy, that miter saw is a dream. If you're on the fence about one of these metal cutting chop saws, these carbide tip saws, absolutely have to give it a try. I wish I could say that I was sponsored, but that is not the case. But I would 100% buy that saw again. If you're on the fence, like I said, just give it a whirl, find somebody, pick one up, it's definitely worth it. So we've got our leg assembly here. Basically we've got our 2 stretchers and then we have our 2 legs here. So the legs are gonna stand up like this, and then these stretchers will sit in between. We're gonna have one down towards the bottom, and then obviously we'll have one right up at the top to support the countertop. So, next up, we just gotta lay out where exactly we want those. We can pull those measurements from the drawing, and I'll show you how I prefer to lay things out, and then we'll get to tacking this up, and pretty soon we're gonna have 1 leg assembly done, and then I'll just buzz through the rest of them. So let's get after it. Now, I don't know who came up with the morbid saying there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but there are. My preferred method for layout with metalworking stuff is a combination square and a scribe. This is just a hardened material scribe tip. I actually made this one in college in machine class, but I use it all the time. Basically what we want is we are gonna set our bottom stretchers 8 inches up from the ground. We'll have some adjustable feet, so they'll actually end up a little higher, but for this case, we want to make a mark 8 inches from the bottom of the tube. If you were trying to be incredibly accurate on layout, you'd pull everything from maybe the top of the tube down in case the length of these tubes varied a little bit. But for what we're doing here, this is going to be pending close. So I've got my combination square set at 8 inches. All I'm going to do is simply take my scribe and make a little mark. Now, I don't know if that shows up on camera, but we'll just take that mark and we'll drag it all the way across. We'll do it on this other one. You can almost hear the metal just etching itself a little bit. Especially in this mill scale, it shows up really well to the eye. Like I said, I don't know if it shows up on camera, but this makes an incredibly fine mark for layout. Way sharper than a pencil, it doesn't rub off, so we know that's where we're gonna weld the tube, and let's get everything mocked up. But anytime you can hide this seam on the tube, you wanna try and do that. That seam, when painted, will stand out like a sore thumb. If you can feel it, you're gonna see it in paint. So if we can, we always hide these seams. Okay, now that we got everything laid out, I'm gonna introduce you to the other star of this show that makes fabrication so much easier. This right here. This is a Fireball Tools Mega Square. I believe it's the 8-inch Mega Square. Look it up, they make amazing products for fabricators. Basically, this gives us square clamping surfaces, and that's gonna allow us to clamp all this stuff together really easily and keep it all nice and square. One of the biggest issues you can have when building something like this is either distorting into a parallelogram or any other random shape because you don't have 90-degree angles. So these are really gonna help us keep everything right where we want it to be. Because this bench is not deep enough to get this whole project on here, obviously, I'm gonna position my clamps strategically so that the bench supports them. I'm not also gonna weld it on here. I'll probably tack it on here so I'm not working on the ground, but then I'll jump down to the ground. So put our pieces together loosely. We'll start clamping this thing together. Once again, weld seams are gonna be facing the wall on everything. And then on this tube, I wanna put the weld seam down. We've got a few good heavy tacks on the bottom. I don't want to get too much heat built up into this part, especially before I get this top brace on, because it could pull these legs in. And I also don't want to melt the pads on these clamps. So I'm going to tack up the top stretcher and then we'll burn it all in. The other style of clamp that works really well, even for bigger tubing like this, lets you really easily position and reposition things so you get it just right. Lastly, before we finish tacking this leg assembly together, we're just gonna check our diagonals. If those numbers are the same, then we know it's square. So, because this isn't rocket science, we'll just pull outside to outside here, 45 3/8. I'll pull the same measurement here, 45 3/8. It's perfect. Easy as that. The squares, proper tools, good square cuts. It's just not that difficult. Easy peasy. 5-10 minutes of welding. Here we go. A really sturdy start to a workbench. Now, unfortunately, that's all the time I have for today. It's a Sunday, getting late, time to go hang out with the dog and wife. And yeah, we'll jump on the other set of legs here next weekend, get our stretchers put in. I'll order up some parts from Send Cut Send this week. And we'll be well on our way to having a really sturdy start to the shop. See you next time.